Okay, now I gotta introduce Eric. All right, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I'll keep it short. He's going to tell you his life story, but he's actually a native Iowan. I don't know if very many of you know that. All right, you know he was born in Sac City. Spent some time in Algona too, right? Was it 12, 13 years? 13, 12? A little less than that, not many less than that, but he grew up part of his life here. He's a native Iowan. He knows about Iowa values. And he's been to Iowa quite a bit recently as well. I don't think he knows the time change difference. It's not really California. Sorry. No, this guy's great. He's one of the young folks in the U.S. House of Representatives. He'll talk to you about that as well. Look, I mean, I'm not really old, but I'm old, you know. And you know, I'm not going to be doing this job forever. I want to see my grandkids and all that kind of stuff, right? We do need a new generation of leaders in Washington, D.C. There's no question about that, folks. And I think that we've got a good number of them in the U.S. House of Representatives. But, you know, Eric has been such a wonderful leader on all matters intelligence. He is fighting and taking on the Republicans in this sham investigation in that House Intelligence Committee led by Devin Nunes that really wasn't an investigation at all. Eric is there. You see him a lot on television talking about this. He knows his stuff. He knows the issues. And he's fighting for all the things that Democrats are fighting for. Plus, he's a lot younger than I am. And he's got a heck of a future, I'll tell you that. He is fearless, folks. He is fearless. And, you know, I give him a lot of trouble, but he knows he's got to put up with it at least as long as I'm there. But please give native Iowan Eric Swalwell a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott County. Thank you. And don't we love Dave Lovesack? Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Terry. I came here to help Dave find some Democratic friends, if not only to make his plane rides a little bit more enjoyable. And Dave, when we get more Iowan Democrats in Congress, I hope you'll still hang out with me. Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you to the Scott County Democrats. Thank you to Tom, Troy for representing the state party, and Emmeline for all the hard work you've put in. And thank you, Mayor, for making the trip out here to show them that you, just like me, really believe in the work they're doing. Now, the mayor and I share more in common than representing California. We both had the wisdom to marry Hoosier women. Both of our wives are from Indiana, and my wife says hello. She's at home with our 11-month-old. I've been able to monitor him. The Russian ambassador sent us a beautiful, wonderful baby monitor. It is really good quality and technology. I could hear everything. It's really amazing. I came here because if we win Iowa this November, we win Congress. If we win here, we win Congress. It's as easy as that. If we lose here, we don't want to know what that looks like. But I know why you're here. You're here tonight because you still believe in America. Yes. You believe in her promise that if you work hard, it'll mean something. And I know how hard you work. Some of you work 2 shifts a day. You get up before sunrise. You work so hard, you come home with grease on your hands and pain in your bones. I know Liam. Your dad's working an overnight shift tonight. Liam's a 3rd grader. He's been sitting here all night. What an example we've set for him. Some of you are retired. But just because you're not working doesn't mean you don't care. You're still showing up. You're volunteering at our churches, at our schools, lifting up the lives of people you'd never met. And some of you are students, studying, learning, preparing for this uncertain economy. I want to tell you about a person who you haven't met, who we're all fighting for. I met her a couple months ago on a tour for this group I lead called Future Forum. It's our 27 youngest House Democrats. We wanted to be more than just the IT help desk for our more senior colleagues. So we went on the road to listen to young people, to learn from them, and act for them back in Washington, D.C. And this 19-year-old at a rural community college, she said to me, she said, "Congressman, after the inauguration, I went to the Women's March. When the Muslim ban was put in place, I went to the airport. And when they tried to take my health care, I went to my first town hall." She told me, she said, "I'm investing in my future. So be real with me, Congressman. Does any of this make a difference?" I was put on my heels. This young woman was realizing for the first time in her life that who's at the White House, who's in Congress, who runs her state legislature, it affects her. Whether her hard work amounts to anything. She reminded me a little bit of myself and parents who had big dreams for me. I was born in Sac City, and I saw my mom and dad work very hard to raise 4 boys. My dad worked as a cop. My mom, she did every odd job imaginable. She made doll houses, baked wedding cakes, and she ran a very large, unlicensed daycare facility. Kids everywhere. And I would tell my dad when he'd put that police car in our driveway, I'd say, "Dad, I want to be a cop just like you." And he would say the same thing to me every time. "Son, it don't work that way." And what he and my mom would go on to show me was that they had worked too damn hard, saved too much, and sacrificed everything for me not to have more opportunities than they did. And that their dream for me was to be the first in the family to go to college. And I saw them chase that dream all over our country. We moved from Iowa to Oregon, up and down California. We lived in 10 different homes, rented some of them, sometimes staying with my grandparents, before they were able to work hard enough and save so we could buy the 11th. I went to 9 different schools before graduating high school, because they knew if they put me in a better school, that gave me a better chance of going to college. And they expected that I would work just as hard as they would. They had me on a paper route delivery route at age 10. If I wasn't playing baseball, I was umpiring baseball. If we weren't watching our brothers play soccer, and if I wasn't playing soccer, we were refereeing soccer as a family. I got hired and fired at Aeropostale. I was really bad folding clothes, just as bad as I was at home. But I earned an athletic scholarship and went off and became the first in the family to go to college. And when I lost that scholarship to an injury, they told me I had to go back to work to make it through school and law school. And we got those notices from the bursar's office that this is your last chance. You're going to be dropped from your classes. And so we dug a little deeper. We all worked a little harder because we knew in America it would mean something. I came home after law school and worked as a prosecutor in Oakland, California. And I ran for Congress because I started to fear that many young families were working just as hard as my parents were, but it wasn't adding up to anything. They were just one emergency away from going into debt. A washing machine going out, an unexpected trip to the emergency room, a flat tire. 2 out of 3 families in America today cannot weather a $500 emergency. So when Donald Trump comes to Congress and tells us at the State of the Union that the stock market is at an all-time high, that the unemployment rate is at an all-time low, I think that's not the economy. Is the economy the stock market? Is the economy the unemployment rate? Hell, most of you are working 2 jobs. That's not the economy. The economy is you. That's how you're doing. Whether you're saving more doing better, and dreaming bigger. And so what this young woman needs, who's investing in herself, is for us to invest in her. And for us as Democrats to start uniting around some big, bold values. We must build a modern schoolhouse in every community so we can prepare our kids for this new economy and start valuing again the teachers who are getting them ready. We must listen to these kids and make sure that they can come home from school safely and that there's no right greater in their schoolhouse and our Constitution than their right to live. That's supreme. College today, that's associated with debt. If you ask someone what they associate college with, they'll tell you debt. Imagine that. It's supposed to mean opportunity. College should mean just as much, if not more, to a young person than it does to the banks and the lenders. So here's what we should do as Democrats. We should make a college promise. If you work your way through school and you serve a community in need, you will get a debt-free education. And no longer should the government make a single cent on student loan interest. It's putting an entire generation into debt. And we need to make sure that people are lifelong learners and have a way, if they lose their job to automation or trade deals, that they can go to a community college, get the retraining they need, and always have that dignity to provide. We also have to start taking care of people's health in this country. We have nibbled around the edges too long. It is time for Medicare for every single person, Medicare for all, health care for all in this country. And we should unite and go big on that as Democrats. It's also time, and I know that the mayor sees this, and Dave, you see this, and you're fighting for this in your offices, but patient groups, they come to our office all the time. You hear their stories. They're on their knees every night praying that our nation's leaders will invest in the research necessary to find a cure. It's time that we double down on our investments to cure cancer, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. Put a whole generation of scientists to work and tell every patient group we did all that we could. And healthcare will actually cost less. We must also unite around making sure that climate change that addressing climate change no longer starts an argument, but it starts a workday. It starts a workday at a good paying job in wind and solar and alternative fuel cells. We must also do all we can back in Washington, D.C. to make it a place that works for you again. And I'm convinced that the only way we can do that, after being back there for going on 6 years now, is to get rid of dirty maps and dirty money. Every state in America should do what Iowa and California do. We should have independent redistricting, and I'm supporting legislation that would make that happen in all 50 states. And I've heard too many of your candidates for office talk about the influence of the Koch brothers and outside groups. It's time that we do all we can to strip down to the studs the Citizens United ruling and take dirty outside money out of politics. Hell, we should aspire to have a low contribution limit, publicly financed campaign system in our country. We can do that, and that's what people want. Those are some of the values that we should unite around. To make sure that people have modern schools for their kids, a job you can count on, and a paycheck that grows, health care security for your family, and a government that can collaborate because they're not unduly influenced. But Iowa, until that happens, this November, there's a little resisting we have to do. And I know you know how to resist. I've seen you resist in Des Moines. I've seen you resist at Senators Ernst's and Grassley's town halls. I've seen you show up. And this president, with his impulses, he gives us a lot to resist. When he tries to take us back to the Middle East without a plan, without allies in the region, for an unlimited amount of time, we must resist. When his impulses threaten the livelihood of Iowa farmers who are feeding their families, feeding each and every one of us, and feeding the world, we must resist. This president wants to build a wall on our southern border. When he tries to do that, we must resist. But Iowa, it's not only the physical wall that he's trying to build that's harmful. There's a lot of walls you can't see. So when he tries to put a wall between a woman and her right to make her own health care decisions, we must resist. When he tries to put a wall between a worker and her right to negotiate for fair pay, safe working conditions, and a secure retirement, we must resist. When this president and his allies in Congress try and put a wall between a dreamer and his right to stay in the only country he's ever said the Pledge of Allegiance to, we must resist. Now, I'm still paying off my student loans, but the only debt-free education that I've received has been a PhD in Russian studies. Boy, we saw what they did our last election. And Russia did not intervene and interfere because they were bored or because they were testing software. They wanted something out of it. They saw a president who had invested in Russia and was one of the only few Americans who let them invest so much in him. He can't say a bad thing about Vladimir Putin. He wants to reduce the sanctions put in place for what they're doing in Ukraine and Syria. He wants to diminish the role that our NATO allies have played to check what they're doing in the Balkans and the Baltics. And you would think that the least we could do after what Russia did this last election was just assure the American people that we will never let this happen again, that we will protect and harden the ballot box. I wrote legislation that would create an independent commission. I was inspired by what I saw when I was a 20-year-old intern on September 11th, 2001, working on Capitol Hill, where our nation was attacked, but we saw Republicans and Democrats unite. And the work that they did in the days after, and the weeks and months and years after, to understand how we were so vulnerable, who was responsible, and what we needed to do to make sure it never happened again. That's what I expected from Republicans when a foreign adversary tried to take away our freedom to choose our leaders. Do you think they showed up to do that? Do you think that Steve King, Rod Blum, and David Young are on those bills? They're not. Every Democrat in the House is, and 2 Republicans. So I'm going to do all I can to try and get enough Republicans to get that passed, to protect the ballot boxes. But if we cannot change those minds, whether it's in Congress, the 10 seats in the Senate here, the 10 seats in the State House here, or the 6 seats in the Senate, we're going to have to change some seats. 24 in the House of Representatives. Iowa, are you with me? Can we start to change some seats? So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to show that 19-year-old that in our country, our story, it's when those footsteps go from the town square to the town hall, and that they march, as Dr. King said, on ballot boxes, that all the greatest positive differences in our country have ever come. It was young people who fought to give women the right to vote, civil liberties to all, ended the unlawful wars in Vietnam and Iraq, and made sure that any person could marry anyone they want, regardless of who they were. We can move that young woman to the ballot box. We can make her participate and show her that she can make a difference. And when we do that, when you do that, when we're given the trust of leading again, we have to build on Franklin Roosevelt's 4 freedoms. In 1941, he guaranteed every American, every man, woman, and child, a freedom of speech, a freedom of worship, a freedom from fear, and a freedom from want. We should add a 5th freedom, a uniquely American freedom. The freedom to dream. The dream that my parents dreamed for me in that Algona driveway. The dream that Davenport parents dream for their kids when they work hard every single day. It's this idea that they can do better than we did, and that their hard work will mean something. Iowa, if our kids are free to learn, they're free to dream. If they're free from violence, they're free to dream. If they're free to choose at the ballot box, they're free to dream. If they're free from discrimination, they're free to dream. And if they are free to work hard, and that hard work will always mean something in America, they're free to dream. I still believe in that America. I know you do too. I'm going to continue to fight for it. Fight with me, Iowa, and we will reshape our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman Swalwell. Thank you, Congressman Loebsack. Thank you, Mayor Garcetti. And thank you, all of you, for being here. Good night.